This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, we do encourage you to like and share them on Facebook because it's time for Joanne's World of Nutrition, brought to you by Nutrition World, downtown Fort Pierce, directly across US 1 from City Hall in Fort Pierce, and hosted by Joanne Seeger.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's having an amazing morning so far. So we have a really awesome guest today. I'm super excited, and because I don't want to miss a minute of what he has to share with us, we are going to skip the breathing exercise of the day. So please do it while you're listening, and you might want to get out a pen and a pencil for this show. I think you're going to want to take some notes. So Dr. Peter has been on the show with us before, but this time we're really going to dive deep into the immune system and respiratory infections and the big COVID talk. So please, don't miss a beat. We'll just take a short break at the 10:30 mark, but other than that, we are going to be diving into some really great information. Good morning, Peter. How are you? Yes. Thank you for giving us some time this morning. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Peter. There might be some new listeners. Could you just tell any of our newbies who you are and just a quick synopsis of your background?
Yes, I'm Peter Raj. I have a medical doctor degree, and I'm a board-certified medical oncologist, hematologist. I also hold a PhD in cancer biology and molecular biology. I have worked in community oncology for over 10 years, and recently I've been working with our supplement company, and we're making nutritional supplements that are scientifically formulated based on clinical data, all in one, meaning that all the ingredients that one would need for a specific condition like cancer or nerve pain or pre-surgery, they have them all in this one supplement.
Wow, you definitely got that down pat in a quick minute. All right,
Thanks.
well, so Peter, we definitely, I've been almost nervous to have COVID discussions on my show because I didn't feel that there was enough information that I held and I really was articulate about that I could tell my audience. So I'm so glad to have you on because I know you have the background and you have the research and you also have solutions. So that's why I definitely wanted to talk about it, because you're not going to just, fill us with fear and negativity and leave us hanging. So I'm thrilled to discuss it with you today. All right. So the first thing, can you just tell us your general thoughts on like COVID and respiratory infections and just your whole feeling, maybe your idea of COVID?
Yes, well, respiratory tract infections by themselves are a huge medical problems. Seasonal flu, influenza alone results in 3 to 5 million cases of severe illness. Severe illness meaning it needs hospitalization worldwide a year. Between 300,000 to 650,000 people die annually of influenza. Now, in aggregate, upper respiratory tract infections that are severe are up to 2.4 million. And these data were before the COVID. Of course, we know at this point that there is many, many million more cases of COVID in the world and over 170,000 deaths in the United States. So it is a major, major problem. The severe lower respiratory tract infections have been the number third, cause of death worldwide for the last 30 years. Now with the COVID, we know that now it is actually the number third killer in the country already, and it may be even more. It's a serious problem, and it's actually more serious because there is no good vaccine at this point, and we'll talk about, I guess, the vaccines in general later on a little bit. and there's no good treatment, although luckily there is more and more and more treatment. So it's a big problem. COVID is a new virus relatively, but it's not a new virus. We had this type of virus, coronavirus, back in the 60s, then again in 2003, then again later on in the Middle East. So this is a virus that, have been kind of known, and we may have had the opportunity to try and make some vaccines in the past. But I guess luckily, because there was no severe pandemic until now, this was an issue that was a little bit, I guess, neglected. So that's where we're at this point. And what we need to do is address what we can do in lack of a vaccine or a really, really good treatment.
Right. Well, Peter, it's been upsetting me greatly, and I honestly have been avoiding most news stations for a long time now, because there are some people that go on air or through social media channels that say the immune system cannot be helped. There's nothing that can help. And I remember having you on the show months ago, and you were also talking about how the immune system can be helped. And I honestly don't know how people can say that statement and not have someone, call them out on it. I don't understand. I mean, the immune system is an evolving system. So can you explain to people, what is the immune system? We use this term everywhere now, but some people don't understand what that system is.
Yes. Yes. First of all, the immune system can be helped. We know that there is hundreds and thousands of data and scientific, studies and clinical studies. Definitely. The immune system is basically a system that comprises of many, many areas of our body, and their common goal is to help us, to help protect us from infections. And if you look at the immune system from a wide angle, we can count the skin, for example, the epithelial layer as part of the immune system, because it protects us from infections. Then the layers on the inside, from the mouth all the way down through the guts, the mucosal layer of the guts, they are part of the immune system. But then again, more specifically, there is the different type of white blood cells, neutrophils, macrophages, lymphocytes, natural killer cells. They are a very important part of the immune system, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit later.
Okay.
Also, there are proteins in the blood that attack and kill bacteria and attack viruses. This is called the complement system, very important part of the immune system. Our lymph nodes are the filters of infected cells and cancer in our blood, because the immune system protects us not just from infections, but also from cancer. The spleen, the liver, to a certain extent, are very important parts of the immune system. The inner layer of the blood vessels, the endothelial cells, are also very important. They protect the body from bacteria and germs going from the blood into our body, but they also make certain cytokines, proteins that modulate the immune system. They make some complement and blood clotting factors. The blood clotting system is also part of the immune system. So this is the immune system in general.
Right. Peter, we've heard the word cytokines so often on the news, and I love how you can tell they're reading scripts or teleprompters and throwing this word out there like all of us should know what cytokines are, and you just mentioned it briefly, and it sounds like, the whole body's involved in the immune response, the way you're naming
Absolutely.
everything, right? Which makes sense to me. You know how I am. I roll with common sense. I might not know all the big words, but I know this entire body, head to toe, it's all connected. So the cytokines, why are they keep addressing that one word when it comes to COVID?
Well, cytokines are basically proteins, peptides, compounds that immune cells make, and the way they communicate with each other. So the immune cells, the endothelial cells, they make these proteins, and that's how they stimulate or control each other. Now, it's very important to talk about immune boosting and immune modulation, because with just boosting the immune system could lead to a problem. you have to not just boost but modulate. And modulating meaning controlling the immune system and regulate it, because there could be a problem with an overactive immune system. And this is exactly what happens in the severe COVID infection. I'll tell you a little bit about the innate immunity in a second. Innate immunity is one part of the immune system where basically this is the, innate means inborn. This is the natural immunity that's fast, it's quick acting, it's not specific. If some bacteria or virus or anything comes into your body, this innate immune system starts working and creates an inflammation. And basically the inflammation is what's getting rid of the infection. And then once the infection is taken care of, all the damage that the system does and the inflammation resolves. So there is the pro-inflammatory cytokines and there's the anti-inflammatory cytokines. Again, these are proteins, and we can even call them hormones, that these cells produce to stimulate each other, to control each other. If this system is not controlled well, not modulated, it gets out of whack. And then the pro-inflammation will create this vicious cycle where it goes on and on and on, and the anti-inflammation doesn't kick in. This is what happens in COVID, and this is what people call that cytokine storm.
Okay.
So there is this vicious cycle of escalating inflammation, and really the damage that's done to the lungs and the blood vessels and the liver and the kidney in a severe COVID infection is our own immune system. It's that overexcited and positively cascading inflammation that happens without control. So when we talk about immune boosting and immune modulation, one of the goals that we have is to modulate this system and to curb that pro-inflammation cascade that will lead into that vicious cycle that it's not reversible, unfortunately. That's why a lot of people die of COVID infection.
And do you believe that nutrition can have an impact on the immune system?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a fact that's been proven 100 times, 1,000 times, directly and indirectly. We know that people who are malnourished are much more prone to infections. We've seen it with the Spanish flu 100 years ago. We've seen it many, many times. There's a lot of data that shows that people deficient in vitamin C or deficient in vitamin D are prone to certain infections, especially respiratory tract infections, and other immune modulators. Absolutely, it's unequivocal and it's clear.
And the one thing that I hope my listeners understand is, like Peter mentioned, malnourished. You can have enough calories in your day, but if they're empty calories, you're still malnourished. It's not the amount of food you consume, it's the amount of nourishment you're receiving from that food. So that's a really critical point. Sometimes they think, here in the States, because we consume so much and most are overweight, that where we could never be malnourished. But unfortunately, that's the furthest from the truth. We're eating so many empty calories that we're not absorbing the nutrients like we were meant to. So
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And just to mention one more thing about the nutrients, the vitamins, the A, the B12, C, D, some microelements, and some other compounds, they are so important in immunity that each of these micronutrients, they were granted health claims in the European Union for immunity. So it is not just proven, but it's also acknowledged in the European Union that these are, in fact, extremely important.
Well, I think we would need a whole entire another show to say why we're not acknowledging it here. So we'll just stick to all the positive stuff.
Yes.
So I mentioned too, so not only do we have to worry about taking in foods that have these nutrients, but also absorbing it. And I stress with all my customers gut health, because if we're not absorbing it, then what's the point? So what is your take on gut health and immunity?
The guts are not just extremely important, but they're probably the most important part of our immune system. We hear it a lot, but I'd like to re-emphasize that around 70 to 80% of our immunity is actually in the guts.
Should we tell our listeners what the guts are? We're saying it like we should assume everyone knows what the guts are. Should we tell them what the guts are?
Sure. The guts, the gastrointestinal system that starts from basically our mouth all the way to the very end of our bowels. It includes the throat, the mouth, the throat, the esophagus, the food pipe, the stomach, the small bowel, and the large bowel and the rectum. So most of the immunity is in the small bowel, a little bit in the large bowel. But the small bowel is really where most of the action takes place. And again, 70 to 80% of our immunity is there. Other than our skin, our bowels, the guts, are the ones that are in contact with the outside world. Anything we put in our mouth goes into our body through the guts. It happens, the gut decides what's getting absorbed, what's getting into our blood, into our body, and what's not allowed and will, be purged
if
from our
it's
body.
working correctly.
Yes, and exactly. And there's an extremely complicated system between the immune cells and the neuroendocrine cells and our central nervous system, that everything reacts to certain things that we put on our body. And then that's why the integrity and the proper function of the gastrointestinal tract, the guts, are extremely important. If we have leaky guts, which is a term that we hear a lot nowadays, then anything can get through, and all the toxins, all the problems, the poisons can get into our body, and then you end up with infections, with cancer and all kinds of things. So the integrity of the GI tract, and to support the integrity of the GI tract, is of utmost importance. And we can do that with multiple nutritional supplements and probiotics, of course, and things like that.
I have a quiz I give to my customers at the store to see if they might have leaky gut. And unfortunately, it's a very short, 1 minute taking quiz, and most people are checking many of the boxes on this quiz. And, with any listeners that might not know what Peter referred to with leaky gut, it means that pathway of what stays in and what comes out is kind of broken. It's like having this beautiful gate around your home, but then the lock's broken. You just don't know who's coming in or out. It's the same thing with the intestines. Their job is to really have a nice barrier, and sometimes things are getting through that don't belong. Yeah, the gut, definitely important, huh, Peter?
Absolutely important. And everything we can do to support the guts is crucial, and just by supporting our guts and the integrity of the gastrointestinal system will help us with immunity immensely.
Well, Peter, we have 5 more minutes before the initial break. I know we're going to really dive deep into supplements and the great company, and as far as to add to our diet. But are there any foods or any diet suggestions that you have personally that you might follow for gut health, just to try to keep the permeability kind of safe?
Other than supplements, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously probiotics are one of the most important foods. Sauerkraut, kimchi, yogurt, kefir, these are the greatest sources of natural probiotics. Prebiotics are very, very important.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people now. Do you know the potato trick for prebiotics? Have you ever heard that one?
No.
Okay, so one of my friends, he's a holistic practitioner. He gave me this trick, and I can't believe it took 33 years to learn this. So you take organic potatoes, you boil them, and as soon as they're done cooking, you put them in the fridge, and it changes the molecular structure, so it becomes a resistant starch. So it's a pre-probiotic to help nourish your good bacteria instead of just being a starch that's going to make your waistline grow. Isn't that cool? I never knew that before because I love potatoes. So
it is very cool. And of course, we know about salads, cabbage, all the cruciferous vegetables that are very important, and the fibers. And these are prebiotics. For those that you don't know the term prebiotics, prebiotics are basically fibers that give space for the probiotics to grow on, to live on. And probiotics are the ones that will line up as soldiers on our intestinal mucosa, the inner layer of the guts, and protect us and keep the integrity of that gut to prevent it from being leaky guts.
Yep, those are all my favorite things. I definitely refer to them often. I would say the problem here, like, I don't know if you noticed, but here in the United States, our yogurt is just severely compromised. But, I've been to Europe, and oh my gosh, it's night and day. When you taste European yogurt versus
Yes.
ours, there's not one similarity. I mean, not only are the portions much smaller, and they're in those cute little glass jars, oh my God, and they taste so much better, so
More.
yeah, so that's the only thing I worry about with our grocery store chains is the yogurt they offer. But all those other things now, they do have lots of kimchi choices and raw sauerkrauts and lots of healthy probiotic food. So we are going to take a break, but when we come back, some of you might be saying, Joanne, I'm not going to eat that kind of food. I don't touch those cabbages and Brussels sprouts that you're always promoting. Well, we are going to go deep into immune system health with supplementation and why all these supplements you're hearing about, zinc, vitamin C, A, D, why are they great for the immune system? And proof of it, clinicals, and also beta-glucans, if you haven't heard about that one, an amazing one that Dr. Peter is going to tell us all about. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Guiding the Treasure Coast in health, one person at a time. That's their motto at Joanne's Nutrition World in the historic arcade building on US 1, downtown Fort Pierce. Joanne brings more than 25 years of experience in the natural health industry, right here to you. Take advantage of this free personal guide to wellness and good health. Meet with Joanne herself and get started. Nutrition World always provides you with the hottest new product lines and, best of all, expert advice from the people who care. Call Joanne at 464-3598, 464-3598, and learn the correlation between diet and great health. Stop in today. The expert guidance to health is always free at Nutrition World. Nutrition World in the Arcade Building, US 1, downtown Fort Pierce.
Listen to Joanne's World of Nutrition every Thursday morning at 10 on WPSL.
Hey, it's Dr. Ravi at Tradition Family Chiropractic. We are dedicated to serving you and your family with integrity, compassion, and innovative care through the most advanced chiropractic care ever in chiropractic history, encouraging your health and your family's health to its maximum potential on a regular basis. Call us today at 772-345-0060 or schedule online at traditionhealth.com for your free consultation.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
We now return to Joanne's World of Nutrition with Joanne Seeger.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning. I am thrilled, I am thrilled to have a great guest on with me today. This is Dr. Peter, over 25 years of experience with oncology, hematologist. He is just a wealth of information, and why I love Dr. Peter is because he is a doctor that took the time to research supplements and knew that the world could exist with both types of medicine together. So his supplementation programs are based on clinical science. He really thoroughly researched everything he puts into his supplements. So that is why we have him on today. And we are talking about the tough conversation of COVID, respiratory tract infections, and how the immune system, yes, it can be helped. So no matter what stage you're at in life, it's always important to recognize our immunity is based on our choices. It's not a roll of the dice. So let's definitely work on our immune system. So Dr. Peter, hi again.
Hi.
All right. So we talked about what the immune system is. We talked about gut health because, like you mentioned, 70 to 80% of our immunity is coming from that. I'd say that's really important. And that food, nutrition, and supplements do make an impact. But we got to talk about the big one because I kind of chuckle with this one. So the 33 years I've been doing this, I mean, we've been preaching this one forever. Hello, Linus Pauling days. So good old vitamin C. And when there's naysayers about this one, I kind of want to go through the media and strangle them because I'm like, really, vitamin C? Come on. So tell us your thoughts on vitamin C.
Yes, I mean, vitamin C is an extremely, extremely important vitamin. It has been studied the most, probably vitamin C and vitamin D are the two vitamins that's been studied most for their effects on the immunity, especially nowadays in light of the COVID-19. And both have been found extremely effective. Before I go in there, let me just say a few words about the adaptive immunity, because we talked about innate immunity. The immune system is comprised of two systems. One is the innate immunity, which is, as we mentioned, it's a fast-acting, non-specific reaction where it causes a lot of inflammation that resolves the inflammation. The adaptive immunity is the slower acting but specific immunity. So first, the innate immunity is engaged, and as the cells of the adaptive immunity start working, they will find proper, proteins they call antigens of the infecting agent, and they present them to other cells, and then they start making specific antibodies and specific reactions. And this is what's called the adaptive immunity, which is initially slow, but next time the body meets that same infectious organism, it's already going to be fast because it has what's called the immunological memory. And this is how vaccines work. Will stimulate the immunological memory and the adaptive immune system. And then when the body meets the actual infection, the immune system already has a fast-acting but specific response. So vitamin C, which has been studied very, very thoroughly, affects both the innate and the adaptive immunity. It affects white blood cells, migration to the infection, phagocytosis, how they actually gobble up the infecting agent. It affects antibody production. It's been clear that people who are deficient in vitamin C are very susceptible to severe respiratory infections, namely pneumonias. And this has been shown. There is many data and what's called a meta-analysis. When they put a lot of data together in one study, it shows that there's a significant reduction in the risk of pneumonia with vitamin C supplementation. And what's interesting, it doesn't only prevent, but it also treats diseases. So several studies show that the duration and the severity of respiratory infections is decreased. And this holds water for COVID too. In fact, there are several studies now where we give not just oral, but IV vitamin C intravenously to help fight the infection and to modulate the immune system.
I know some of my listeners are wondering what doses that might be. I get asked that quite frequently. Well, Joanne, I know vitamin C, but how much is necessary? Do you happen to have that information?
Yes, actually, I came across a study that specifically mentions that there's different doses for prevention and for treatment. For prevention, really to reach the proper dose, because vitamin C accumulates in white blood cells. It accumulates in lymphocytes, macrophages, leukocytes. 100 to 200 milligram is enough. Most supplements will have between 100 and 1,000 milligram. Some people are a little weary about the dose over 500 because of potential kidney stones, although it doesn't really happen, especially if you hydrate well. But officially, 100 to 200 milligram would do the job as preventive to have the proper level. But then a recent review, specifically for COVID, it also says that it is justified to do higher than the daily recommended dose, specifically for vitamin C and vitamin D, because of their effectivity. Now, if you use it for treatment, you're going to have to use grams, 1 or 2 grams, because it gets depleted so fast. It's also an antioxidant, and with the inflammation, there's so much oxidative stress that the vitamin D is used up very, very quickly. So IV, they use 1.2 gram to 2 grams, depending on the protocol. So that's a higher dose.
Okay, that's a great answer. And I have always suggested if someone's making some bad lifestyle choices like smoking, vaping, or alcohol, that they up their C and D3. Do you have similar thoughts to that?
Absolutely. C and D work in synergy. Vitamin D is a topic that we need to mention separately too.
Oh, yeah.
But vitamin D actually helps retain and recover vitamin C. So the two work very well together in synergism, and they both boost immunity and they both modulate, especially vitamin D. Vitamin D is the conductor of the immune system. Vitamin D is called vitamin traditionally, but really it is way more than a vitamin. It's a hormone. It's one of the most important we have, and we know nowadays that it has roles not only in the bones, but immunity, every aspect of immunity, very effective in immune modulation, and even cancer prevention and treatment, arthritis. It's all over. Vitamin D, I always say, and this is true, vitamin D is the reason people who migrated north turned whiter.
Oh,
Because the body, and this is actually a fact, this, as the people started off in Africa, darker skin, and they migrated north and then later south. And the more north they migrated, the whiter they become. And that is solely because of vitamin D, because that's how the body is able to make a vitamin D and convert vitamin D to the active form with the UV light of the sun.
Right.
So it is so important that it actually influenced
the color of the skin.
the color of the skin and basically evolution, which I think is amazing.
That is amazing. I never really knew that. One thing too is most customers that do have the capability to get their blood tested on a regular basis keep coming up deficient. And it usually takes pretty high doses for them to get stabilized, and then they'll take a smaller dose to maintain that stabilized amount. And I know that, I always take it. I've been taking it for many years, the D3. I pretty much go around 2,000 IUs. Just like I asked you that tough question with C, I'm going to go right there with the D3. What are your thoughts on prevention dosing and COVID dosing?
Yes, same thing. 2,000 IU for a female is perfect. I usually recommend 3,000 for males. Of course, you can go scientifically and measure the level. And if you're less than 20, then you definitely need supplementation. It doesn't hurt to boost. Many people give these mega doses, 50,000 units weekly for a few weeks. But 2,000 for a female, 3,000 for a male is a proper dose, especially in Florida, where we get some sunlight as well. Now, if you do have an active infection, you need to at least double that. You have to go to at least 5,000, 6,000, maybe 10,000 units a day, because again, vitamin D is so extremely important. And as you mentioned, vitamin D levels, yes, vitamin D levels are known to decrease with age. And that's extremely important because elderly are more affected by the virus. And vitamin D levels are also lower in African Americans, probably because of the darker skin and because it's not converting as well. And some people actually suggest that is the reason why we see a higher infection and a higher mortality rate with COVID in African Americans. So It is so important.
That makes sense. And I know here in Florida, Peter, our elderly, especially ones that are nursing homes, they've pretty much kept them cooped up in four walls. So there's not many that are getting out for sunshine and fresh air. I know plenty of adults in general that don't get the fresh air they should, or they're constantly with clothing or sunblocks and, chemical sunblocks. So it's really, a lot of Floridians keep telling me, well, I don't need D3, I'm in Florida. But unless you're purposely getting that, early morning or late day sun with no sunblocks and exposing your skin, you probably are not converting it to a usable form. But sunshine, has so many other great cofactors, people. So just because you take a D3 pill, don't think you can avoid the sunshine, because sunshine gives us so many great things for the immune system.
Right. Absolutely right.
I mean, not only immune system, just makes you feel better, right? Lifts your spirits.
Yes, and also a sense of normalcy. Really, the last 6 months,
yes.
It's been very difficult.
I know my husband and I just took the dogs for a walk it was just a 15-20 minute walk, just alone and in the sunshine, and I felt like, wow, this is so grounding. I feel normal again. So yes, it's a definitely good idea, and just get outside just a few minutes, and this horrible heat and humidity will pass, just like COVID. Everything will pass. All right,
I'm sorry, just
go ahead.
a few more things about vitamin D. You asked me earlier what you can do about that cytokine storm. And this is exactly why vitamin D is so important, because vitamin D shifts that pro-inflammatory cytokines towards the anti-inflammatory cytokines. It modulates the innate immune system towards the anti-inflammation. And it's so important that it actually has been shown in at least 2 different studies by Grant and Eiley, which was both recently published, that vitamin D supplementation decreases the mortality rate in COVID. So at this point, it is basically standard of care to use vitamin D, not just to prevent, but also to treat the infection because of these effects.
All right, that's a critical point. I'm glad you got that in there. The other one that, I can't keep it stocked, it's like flying off the shelves, is zinc. I used to push zinc lozenges 30 years ago for whenever someone would come in with a sore throat or cough. How is zinc related to respiratory tract infections and COVID?
Zinc is an essential trace element. Zinc is part of many enzymes in our body. For example, an enzyme called superoxide dismutase that gets rid of oxygen radicals in the blood that needs zinc and copper for function. Zinc can be found in every cell, every different cell in the immune system, and it acts as an immunomodulator as well. So just like vitamin D, zinc is an immunomodulator as well. The other important aspect of zinc, and this has been shown the last 20 years with the first coronavirus SARS-1 back 17 years ago, that zinc actually has a direct antiviral effect on the coronavirus. And that is why zinc is also basically a standard treatment for coronavirus prevention and treatment. It has a direct antiviral effect, and at the same time, it also modulates the immune system. So that's why zinc is important.
Okay, now with the zinc, it's been hard for me to order strong doses, but I do believe that prevention is everything. Never waiting until your immune is compromised, always prevention. So I've been, 15 to 30 milligrams each day. What are your thoughts on zinc and the dosing?
The recommended daily dose is 11 milligram on zinc. And there are some data that if you take it every day and you take more than 30 milligram, then it could be toxic. So the 10 to 30, I think, is a perfect dosing. However, when again you do have the virus, then you will need higher doses. 50 milligram pills are available, even higher than that.
Right.
There are some data for surgery. Of course, we know that zinc plays a very important role in the skin and the hair and the wound healing. So there are some data that for surgical patient, preoperative, they give up to 220 milligram of zinc. But this is for a shorter period of time. And again, that's a special situation. 10 to 30 is perfect, and up to 50 daily if somebody should come down with the virus.
Okay, perfect suggestion. All right, so now those are the key ones that everyone's been hearing repeated, but aren't there other electrolytes or things that also are involved with the immune system?
Yes, copper, as I mentioned, is extremely important, and not just because it's part of many enzymes and processes that go on in immunity, but it also has a direct anti-viral effect. It also kills the viruses directly, just like zinc. Magnesium and calcium are general second messengers that basically are important in every aspect of our life and every organs in the body, including the immune system. So those are the most important ones.
Oh my gosh, Peter, I did a whole show on copper. I'm absolutely in love with copper now. I have a friend who is really heavy duty into nutrition, and he's a jeweler, and he makes these really cool copper sticks that you can use like for your throat and sinus cavity. You know, he only sells it to family and friends, but yeah, I really dove deep into copper. Super cool. I mean, yeah, people so overlook these things, and just because there's just a little needed in our body, they think it can't be important. But, you know, everyone thinks calcium and all this. I'm like, no, all these trace minerals, they all are important. It's like one big happy family coming to dinner and making homeostasis.
I couldn't agree more. You know, that's why in the old days, people were cooking in copper pots. And that was a reason for that. Of course, nowadays it's available. Some of them are very expensive, but I always recommend them because they don't just look, you know, cool and nice, but they're also very helpful to cook in those copper pots.
Right. Well, hopefully we have a lot of listeners that will spread the word, and copper will become popular again in the right amount, in the right way.
Exactly.
So, Peter, the next nutrient that I'm hearing a lot about, but kind of in an indirect way, is like vitamin A and retinol palmitate and retinoids. And I gotta be really honest that I kind of like about 5, maybe 10 years ago, lost track of that nutrient. I guess the popularity kind of waned in the consumer basis, and sometimes retailers have to go with the trends to, you know, keep their stores alive. So I lost track of that one, but I know you love it, and you know, you need to reignite me, because I was like, oh my God, I forgot how awesome it's almost like the copper. So now I'm back on the retinoid bandwagon. So tell my listeners why this nutrient's so special.
Retinoids, it's a class of compounds that are basically all available through foods, and you know, we know about carrots and other vegetables, and it includes like retinoic acid, beta carotene, lutein, zeaxanthin. There are a few new ones that we know more and more about. Traditionally, vitamin A was associated with the vision and the skin, and you know, they still use it for acne and some skincare products. You know, have to be careful if you're pregnant, especially because it can cause some developmental issues in the babies. So that's important. But the eyes, we also know that they are strong antioxidants. But the immune role is relatively new. We know that vitamin A, you know, derivatives, you know, beta carotene, lutein, zeaxanthin, these are very important immune modulators. And again, not just boosters, but modulators. They control, regulate, normalize the immune function. There's another role that I like to mention, which is very important in terms of COVID. We hear a lot about blood clots in COVID. Now, why does that happen? As I mentioned, the endothelial cells, the inner layer of the blood vessels, are an important part of our immunity and the barrier function. But these endothelial cells, they do make and store a lot of coagulation factors, blood clotting factors. You know, our blood has this system where it has to flow, but at the same time it has to clot if you have an injury. It's a very finely modulated system. And many of those coagulation factors are in the endothelial cells. Now, the endothelial cells happen to have a lot of receptors to which the COVID, the coronavirus, SARS-2 binds. The S1 protein of the coronavirus binds to these ACE2 receptor, and the endothelial cells have a lot of that. And the virus damages the endothelial cells, and as the endothelial cells get damaged, all these procoagulants, these coagulation factors, will get released into the blood. And that is why we see all this blood clots, pulmonary embolism, heart attack, stroke with the COVID. Initial few months, they didn't realize that, but nowadays blood thinners are standard treatment for the infection because of this. Now, what I'm getting at is the vitamin A derivatives like lutein, zeaxanthin, they actually come from marigold. They protect the endothelial cells from damage. So it's a very important role for the vitamin A derivatives to protect the endothelial cells. And that's another mechanisms how it helps specifically in the coronavirus infection.
Wow, that's very interesting. I did not know that part of the virus. All right, so, and I know too, like with the vitamin A, you're mentioning all like the carotenoids and everything, which can become, but it's hard to get it from the food. I mean, when you go through the list of the things that give us the retinoids, it's more difficult to get the whole family. Like, remember great grandma used to do the teaspoon of cod liver oil for strong amounts of A. Not many people are willing to ingest cod liver oil these days, or beef liver, or the liver of animals where the highest A content is.
Right.
So I know you're listing a lot of supplements, and hopefully the listeners are not getting overwhelmed, but we got to talk about one more. I find this one, I always think about this one in the heart, but what are your thoughts on CoQ10 with COVID and respiratory issues?
Well, CoQ10 is an antioxidant, a strong antioxidant, and it also helps with energy production, the ATP production in the cells. What we have to think about is the part of the body that's most closely affected by oxygen is the lungs. So, of course, through breathing, the oxygen goes into the lungs, but oxygen causes some oxidative stress. So the lungs need to be protected most, and these are the same organs that actually are more prone to infections, obviously, because that's how we breathe in the germs. So it's been shown that people that low on antioxidants, specifically coenzyme Q, they have more lung disease, chronic obstructive disease, asthma, more chronic lung diseases. And it's also been shown that if you supplement people with asthma, for example, with coenzyme Q, their need for treatment, steroids, will go down. So coenzyme Q helps with antioxidants and specifically helps in the lungs. Coenzyme Q also is good for the heart and, again, energy production, but it also works on immunity. There was a Swedish study recently that showed that coenzyme Q10 stimulates natural killer cell activity. Natural killer cells are the white blood cells that kill the cells that are infected by viruses. So the NK cell activity, which is part of the innate immune system, is very, very important in COVID. And some of these supplements, the C, the D, and the CoQ10, they specifically stimulate NK cells as well.
Okay, it sounds like you definitely want them on your team. I love CoQ10, and I know I always push it, especially for anyone over 35. I find that it gets more and more important as you get older. So the CoQ10, there's a lot of schools of thoughts on the dosing for that. Do you have a favorite dose that you like to say for prevention in COVID?
CoQ10, you're right. It goes from 50 to 250 milligram.
Yep.
I think in that range, anywhere, anything you take, 100 is a common dose that you see in supplements. So 50 to 100, I think for prevention is good enough if you take it on a daily basis. But then again, in acute infection, you may want to go up to 250 milligram or something like that.
Yeah. I remember when CoQ10 was super in the limelight, I actually had a talk about it, and they said half your body weight is a good guide. So I've been preaching that for this many years. So it usually turns out to be close to 100 milligrams, depending on the person. All right, so now all our listeners are like, okay, great, Dr. Peter, you're saying zinc and C and CoQ10 and all these great nutrients, and we only have a couple minutes left. Let's talk about Nutronco and your amazing new supplement for the immune system, because all my listeners will get 25% off any of Peter's formulations from Nutronco. So come into the store, call the store, shipping for free. So please tell us about your amazing new immune formula.
Well, our immune formula called Parimmune is just like our other formulas, an all-in-one. That means that all the ingredients we talked about and that are important, it contains. And that includes the vitamin C or D, B12 we haven't mentioned. B12 is important. It supports probiotics and the barrier function in the guts. And A, in fact, it has 3 different type of retinoids. It has beta-glucans, probiotics. It has all the ingredients that a healthy immune system needs to be supported, and not just immune boosting, but immune modulation, regulation of the immune system. It's a preventive dose, and for all year round immune support. It supports the innate and the adaptive immune system. It's a total immune support for whole year round, all in one. I think it's an amazing value. If you look at the ingredients separately, you would probably pay 3-4 times more for the separate supplements than just taking this one supplement.
Yeah, and the convenience, and honestly, I'm having a hard time sourcing out these separate ingredients, especially vitamin A. So to have it all, and we are well stocked on it, and so it's a 2 a day. Am I correct, Peter?
Yes, okay. It's 2 capsules once a day. It's easy, very well tolerated. I take it myself, and my family takes it actually too. Yes, it's easy to take. Okay. You make sure you don't take it on empty stomach like all the other vitamins. It's easier after food.
Okay. Oh, we're getting the music, Peter. We're getting cut off. So Nutronco.com, there's more information, or you can just call the store, 464-3598. Get it shipped to you for free, 25% off. Dr. Peter, thank you. I hope you and your family stay blessed and well. Bye.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have an awesome week.
You've been listening to Joanne's World of Nutrition, brought to you by Joanne's Nutrition World. Visit her website, www.joannesnutritionworld.com. Tune in every Thursday morning in the 10 o'clock hour for Joanne's World of Nutrition, right here on Digital 1590 WPSL. Is one of the many ways, one of the many reasons why we are the talk of the Treasure Coast. WPSL, Port St. Lucie.